we ready? Are we ready? We have people waiting. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the live Q&A session of Community Speaking the Taboo. Thank you so much for joining us this evening with our wonderful participants from all across North America. For all our audience members, please feel free to post your questions in the chat box and I will try my best to get to all of them. This Q&A will be conducted for 40 to 45 minutes. And in that much time, as many questions as I can, I will get to them. Hi guys, how does it feel? Welcome to the Q&A section. Before I dive into the audience questions, let me start by asking everyone a question. You know, this is such a vulnerable space and everybody is so vulnerable. Everybody's sharing such deeply personal stories. How did you guys form that bond given the virtual nature? I know you guys have not met. I know how everything went, but let's give a glimpse into our virtual world to our audiences. I'm just gonna go from left to right on my screen. So Masoon, why don't we begin with you?
It's been amazing journey, with virtual our meetings and our discussions on stories and learning each other's struggles and the success that we found. We cried together, we laughed together, and it was an amazing journey. And it's a community that we have built, and it's said that this project has ended, but we have made a community that we will go on meeting with such nice people.
We absolutely will. We cannot wait to host a reunion in Seattle, right? Saleha, what about you?
This bonding virtually is, they say it's hard, but I don't think it was very hard for us. Me being a little bit, like, for me, it is always hard to bond with people, so it took me a little late to bond with everyone, because I'm really shy and I don't, like, this is something, especially the topic that we were discussing, and I'm so used to covering up these sort of things and not letting it show and having this filter, this parda, and to the outside world and what's actually going on. And here I was able to allow myself to be vulnerable, and that is really like peaceful. So I'm really very grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you for saying that. Mahima, what about you?
I think we were lucky in the sense that we had a year of operating virtually to adapt to meeting like this. So like connecting with everyone virtually wasn't as it was a pretty smooth transition, and I'm actually personally very happy that we hosted it on and through this medium, because it gave me the opportunity of connecting with people like Paroma and Turfa and Adi and Masoon. Like I wouldn't meet them in Seattle otherwise. So I think it definitely brought down some barriers which would have existed. So and in terms of like connecting through your story, I didn't feel that it was less impactful just because it was on Zoom and not in person. So yeah, I just think that it opened up more opportunities.
That's amazing. And yes, as much as we hate the virtual world, thank you to Zoom for this, right? Like we could bond with folks from outside Seattle. Durfa, what about you?
This is the only virtual gathering I've had, so I loved it because none of my friends we gathered on a virtual setting at all. So at first I was a little apprehensive about how it might feel given we're all strangers. It's awkward itself when it's with friends because the discussions are not the same. But I just loved it. And I can't wait to continue doing more of virtual sessions, maybe with other people as well. And the best times were when we talk after the workshops and continue the conversations. And I've talked with almost everyone except maybe one or two, and it was wonderful. So I just, yeah, I think I'm built for the virtual world.
Wow, I have never heard someone say that, Durfa. Built for the virtual world, but I am so happy we found each other. Abhi, what about you?
Yeah, I think, it was amazing to connect with, I think, 5 of us, right, on the East Coast. That wouldn't have happened if we were doing this live. So I'm so grateful, Masoon, Saleha, Turfa, Aditya, Paroma. And, what I found is, yeah, we all came in with this intention, to share our stories. And with that intention in mind, I think it was so seamless to connect because everything else just drops away. Your name, your religion, your job doesn't matter in this space. In this space, all that matters is a connection from, based out of authenticity, just heart to heart. So your age, and it was so beautiful, and I agree that it can happen even on a virtual platform if it's a true authentic connection like that. So I'm so grateful, to it's been amazing. Yeah, at second Turfa, I think I used to look forward to the Sunday workshops, and I think barring maybe one, I remember every workshop we would end from 2 to 4, and then I would still be on till 6 p.m. another 2 hours, with most of these people because so amazing, lovely, to get to know them. So yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to miss our Sunday sessions for sure. Adi, what about you?
I think I echo what everyone else says, but I also think there is still this like yearning that we all have for like the physical realm and like for physical touch because like that's irreplaceable. Um, but I think that we all really adapted to like the virtual world really well, like with all our symbols to just show that we're still there for each other. And I think it's like what Mohima said, like there's something to be said about the virtual world where we're sharing such intimate stories. So it is really nice to have our own spaces that feel our own and that like, we can kind of maneuver how we share our stories in here. And then lastly, I think the sharing process was refreshingly easy, at least for me, because I think despite our age difference, our cultural difference, like our specific story differences, pain is universal, like happiness is universal, like all of these emotions that we all shared about, whether they were taboo related or not, were quite universal. And then in that universality, we found comfort with each other.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, I love our gestures, right? Paroma, what about you?
Um, I never thought that, at this stage, when you're an adult, it's very hard to form friendships and it's very hard to form close ties with who you can be vulnerable. And I am just, I feel really lucky that I have been able to do that with this group. And, I mean, it's almost as if now I can, if something is going on in my life and I just feel the need to talk to someone, sometimes even the closest of friends, since they know you for so long, have an impression of you. And you're like, yeah, maybe I don't want to share with them. But this space feels so close to my heart that it's like, okay, I can call up the phone, I can call up Turfa or Abi or whoever, and Masood, and sort of say, guys, I mean, this is what I'm going through. I just want to talk, just listen. And that, I think that's really precious. And that is something I close hold to my, like really close to my heart. So, I mean,
you are just a part of me now.
I love that. I love that. I love that so much. Um, Audience members, please feel free to post your questions. We are here for you guys. Till then, we have one comment in the chat box from Anu. She says, that was beautiful, everyone. Thank you all for your courage and strength. And absolutely right. Like, this takes so much courage. This takes so much strength. And with that, I want to dive into my next question of, this is vulnerable stuff, right? Like, you are opening yourself up raw, and definitely the entire process is hard and everything. But what was that one moment in this entire process that was the hardest for you guys? Abhi, let's begin with you, if you're ready.
The moment that was the hardest, you said?
Like maybe a section of your story, or something that you're writing that came up that led you to not want to write, something on those lines. If you want to think, I can definitely go to someone.
I think signing up for the event was the hardest for me, because I almost didn't want to. So that initial fear, confronting that fear, wanting to run away, wanting to hide, wanting to not write my story, and pushing through that and saying that it's okay for me to feel the fear and to lean in, and then to see all you lovely people, it became a lot easier. But I think if I had to be honest with myself, yeah, the hardest was, I mean, I didn't sign up. I don't think officially I did. I came in late. So that just suggests how afraid I was. So I would say, yeah, that was it for me.
I'm so glad you did though. Saleha, what about you?
The hardest part for me was to know what stories I want to share that highlight the taboo. Because my taboo wasn't like one thing in my life, it was like my whole life. So I literally had to make a list from 0 to 100, which is like an exercise I found online, of just events in your life that kind of surround this theme, or like things that came up. And so that took almost 3 weeks of meeting with everyone to try to come up with those ideas. And then the second part was not trying my utmost best not to bring my divorce into the story, because that is something that's been so covered up in my life, that I'm glad I was still able to bring it in, just to show how it was like the kryptonite. It was like the turning point where I was like, I'm not gonna take this anymore, and I want to take those actions to make sure that I'm safe from this type of bias again in my life, because this bias led from one, like a domino effect, from one thing to the other. So that was one of the biggest parts. And once I was able to share that, it made me realize that, this is my story. This is the pivotal moment this is the climax of my story, and it has to be in there. So yeah, that was really hard. So
Thank you for sharing that, Saleha. Masoon, what about you?
The hardest part for me was I wasn't expecting a lot of emotions. When I started writing my story, I was writing about my childhood. And it was, it was like flowers, playing around. And it was such a happy scenery that I had created. But as I was going into later part of my life and my divorce, and I didn't expect the emotions would come out, the part where I wrote about a police coming to my house and arresting me and all that the way the abuse, physical abuse happened. I was not expecting the emotions. It was very hard for me to write. So I would say that was the hardest thing that I had to go through. But throughout the writing process, I know my chest would get tight, and I would cry. I would walk around I would feel all those emotions. But that night I slept very good. So that was the hard part, that I had to deal with that.
Yeah, it's so difficult, right? Like we feel like we moved on, but those emotions come up and they hit you, right?
Yeah, I didn't expect that I would feel that. It was just story.
Mahima, what about you?
The hardest part, I think it was, for me, it was two instances. It was the beginning, just starting the writing process itself. So it was really nice to have that framework of, making the list, um, as mentioned before. But I think the hardest part, and I think you might remember this from our meetings, was you flagging this one question to making, like, tell me how you felt. Can you tell me how you felt? Okay, this happened, but what did you feel? And it was really hard to go back to that, because that is when the entire process became very visceral. There's a friend of mine who says that trauma is stored in your body, and it can manifest itself in a form of pain. Like, I remember my body would start hurting, and it wasn't crying, but it was just, why is this physically painful? um, so I would say that was hard, but it's also a form of release, like just having, like, letting it pass. Um, so it was the hardest and probably the most fruitful result of this process.
Kudos to you. Kudos to you for powering through, to all of you guys, right? So glad you all did. Adi, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's really similar to what everyone said. I think the day I found it to be the hardest was the workshop we had with Natasha, where she had said, it was this working exercise where she said, you're in this dark room and there's this box, and in that box is like your taboo and and your fears, and whatever you like, it was kind of up to you what would be in that box. And I just remember in my box being like this mirror, and me having to look into that mirror. And I just remember in that session, the reason I found it really difficult was because I had to question myself of, do I want to go there? Like, through this program, am I going to, go to that place where I didn't think I would be comfortable enough going? Um, and then the second thing that was the hardest was right before we started to rehearse, because I think I was sort of compartmentalizing, you know, I was convincing myself like this is just a writing exercise. So once I put the words onto paper, I'm done. And like once I close the document or close my laptop, it's done. But then having to put your voice to your story, I think I found a bit difficult, and it was scary, um, especially to hear yourself say your words. But I think we all overcame that one way or another. Yeah.
And you guys did it so well. You guys overcame that so well. Paroma, what about you?
Um, I have to confess something. When I signed up for speaking the taboo, I thought, oh, I write stories. We are going to make up something and I'm going to write something really great. And it's going to be like one of those speaking stuff. I go up and like speak something about a made up story that is really great. And after the first session, I sort of went like, oh my God, really? I have to say something about myself? That was the most uncomfortable and hardest thing that I've done. I don't like speaking about my experiences. I like couching things in third person. It's like almost a defense mechanism. And when I realized that I had to like say something that deeply affected me and something literally I'd really not told anyone to have that out in public. I mean, it's only like a very close friend who knows this, and my husband knows this. But other than that, I hadn't even shared it with other family members, like not even my parents or sister, right? That was the hardest thing for me, to make that decision of whether I wanted to share or not.
I'm so glad you did. I am so very glad you did because people need to hear your story, all your stories. Last but not the least, Turfa, what about you? What was the hardest for you?
The hardest part was deciding which segment to talk about. I think just like everybody, I wrote 32 pages and I wrote everything. And I had come on board, decided that I was going to talk about my mental health and mental illness journey, but Natasha's exercise totally brought up other stuff, which I wasn't prepared for. You know, my relationship with my mother-in-law, which also is a taboo. So, and I got feedback that that should be talked about. So I kept that. And then I spoke about my father, and some people said that should be talked about. So it was like so many taboos are working in your life. Which one do you focus on? And making that decision was very difficult. And I hope I've made the right one.
I think you did. Yeah, you guys all were so amazing in sharing your taboo with the entire world, right? That brings me to our first audience question. We have a question from Anu. The writing was gorgeous. Who was the writing coach? I'm gonna let you guys answer about the coach because you all work with different people. But the writing was all the participants. This is their story. It's them. They have written each word. All the workshop and everything was just to frame it better, but the writing is all the participants. Does anyone want to talk about the writing coach and that process? Anyone want to take that, or I'm just going to call out a name? Go ahead, Faruma.
Anu, just to say one thing, the writing coach, especially sort of, when not just the writing coach, speaking with the right. So I had a lot of back and forth with both Sadi and Farah, and it really made me see my story in a different light. And I think that was the biggest contribution of the writing coaches that we had, because you view things from a very sort of microcosm and your experiences. And when sort of your writing coach comes in, you have this whole other view that you never really thought about. And two big things. Siddhi sort of pushed me to say, no, Paroma, you have to focus on your emotions. You're not doing enough emotions. You're detached. And that was a big thing for me. Yes, I was detached. I realized that. And when Farah came in, she's like, you're making it personal, but just put it in the context of sort of the bigger picture, the racism. You still don't see that this was a part of a bigger picture. And the other person I really have to call out is Adi. Between sort of Adi and Farah, they really made me see what it was, what my story was, that wasn't just a personal story, but fits in a bigger picture. So I am really grateful for the writing coaches, and it would not happen without it, because all of us are limited by our experience.
Yeah, different perspectives, right? Yeah, Adi, please go ahead.
Um, I think I would acknowledge also that it was like Rita, Farah, Natasha, Siddhi, but I also think like every other participant in this group has been a coach and like to each other. From reading it to each of you to listening to each other's story, I think not only were we able to give sort of like writing feedback in the sense of like grammar and like flow and things like that, but we were also able to give larger feedback, because so many of our stories, like things that run through our stories, are so similar, and so many of our experiences. And because this is a South Asian group, I think that was like another level that we were able to connect our experiences, our voices, and our just like our point of views. And I remember saying this in the first session, and I'll keep saying this over. I think it's so important for us to share our stories to people also, not only the ones that don't look like us, but especially for me, because everyone in this workshop looks like my mom, my sister, my aunt, my cousin, people I grew up with, and people whose opinions I value so much, and people who I so badly wanted to share my story with. So being able to share it with everyone in this group was like, they're more than coaches to me. Like, we're all like family and friends, so that meant a lot.
Yes, we are. We are family and friends. Zulfa, do you want to take the next? Oh, Abhi, go ahead. I'll come to Zulfa after that.
No, talking of family and friends, I mean, that's my younger sister Anu asking the question. So yeah, no, it was, yeah, it was really interesting for me. I actually didn't realize that I could write like this. And I pleasantly surprised myself once I started writing, that I could actually come up with my own ideas of how to frame certain things. And then of course, with the guidance of Siddhi and Natasha, I think her workshops really helped, putting a context on. I think what really helped me was when in one of our workshops we said, how can you describe your story in 10 words? That concept really helped me narrow down and focus. And so, yeah, I think it wouldn't have been possible without the help from people like yourselves, and then of course everyone else here. The feedback, right, that we got from each other. It was so beautiful.
Zulfa, would you like to go next?
I think I saw everybody more as personal coaches rather than writing coaches per se. All of our writing styles were so different. At times, I felt like my writing wasn't good enough because I was a more factual and what was happening. I couldn't do the narration part, and but that helped because there were some things I guess I had to say it like that this happened to me before I could put it in narration as if I was telling as a observer. and and again, the more than the writing coach, I saw all of you as my personal coaches, giving me a different perspective, which helped me write it in a way that the message can come across a positive perspective as well, without it being completely through my lenses, as much as it is through my lenses, but try and make the lens as wide as possible. So yeah, I think all of us here helped each other in ways that I don't think we even realized.
Yeah. Masoon, do you want to add something to this?
Yes, for the writing, I really didn't think that I could write anything. It was just an experiment that I did attending this workshop. And Natasha's points, she told us how to bring the emotions into. I think that was the biggest part for me, to bring the emotions into, your sights, your hearing, your smell. That was an aha moment. And once I get that rolling, I could, I was started writing. And it was yeah, I mean, I was writing, but at the same time I was like, no, it's not right. Somebody have to just do something with that, make it better. But Siddhi and Rita and Dee and all the participants, we keep talking to each other, and they're like, no, you did a great job. It's your writing. You have to say it exactly the way you think. And I think that was a biggest moment for me, that yeah, it's my words and it's okay, it's fine, I can convey my message through it. That was a biggest aha moment for me.
That's amazing. Saleha, do you want to touch on this?
Yeah, I agree with what everyone is saying. It really helps to like have a soundboard, like I called Durfa once, I called Masoon once, like it just helps get you that different angle of how okay, your story, but like just saying it and seeing how it's echoed back, like echolocation, how it's reflected back from the audience point of view. It helps you, like it helped, the writing process. So I'm really grateful for everyone for, the time they took out for listening to each other and to me.
Mohima.
I agree with the Adi's point as well, like the peer feedback piece. And I think that is just the nature of the way this event has come together, is having people listen to you and give you a perspective, like that has been really helpful. and not just like give you perspective, but also there's so many pieces that come before it, like hold space, don't judge, bring a level of empathy, and then give feedback. And you're doing it with people that you don't know. Like, that is hard. So I think that helped with the writing process for me, because just like just knowing that it's possible to do that was helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. You all heard Natasha's name, so I want to do a quick shout out to Natasha. This is Natasha Arora. She is our Yoni Ki Baat participant from 2015, and she helped us with two workshops, one on how to write and one on how to edit. And I must say, even for us, it was like an eye opener. We, like Rita, me, and Farah, we took pointers from that and then took it forward to help all our participants. So Natasha, if you're watching, thank you so much. Thank you so much. With that, we have our next question from Anita. Anita says, did our collective physical distance and sense of loss during the pandemic influence your abilities or motivations to share such profound personal stories? If so, how? I can repeat the question if anyone needs it. Go ahead, Sarah.
I can go first. I think be having this workshop be done virtually actually motivated me to do it, because even if I was living still in Seattle, I don't think I would have had the courage to commute, because my commute would have been really long, and coming from my family, they maybe would not have allowed it. And it just like, in the past, I told Abhi this too, whenever like after workshop sessions where like 2 years in a row, I just signed up for like volunteering or something like that for the sphere. And then I never did it because I chickened out. And so I'm glad I did this, because it was like, it made it easier. And then now I'm not living here anymore in Seattle. So yeah.
Yeah, Abhi.
Yeah, I think for that's a very thoughtful question. I would say personally, yes, I think it influenced me, perhaps even unconsciously. So the decision that I made to talk about my depression, I knew that with the pandemic for the last year, a lot of people were feeling isolated, cut off from each other, not seeing their friends and family. And in the men's support groups that I have been part of, I was hearing men talking about how alone they felt. And so somehow I feel that influenced me to say, if nothing else, if my story can just relate to one more person out there who's listening, that they are not alone, in their loneliness. I mean, it's like we are all sharing, right, this loneliness. So yeah, I think it did influence this particular topic that I chose. Because I think I remember my therapist telling me when I was seeing her even last year that there's a mental health epidemic underneath the global pandemic. So I think there's a lot of people in our world who are feeling isolated. And so I think it's time to talk about these things openly.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great way, right? Like we begin with you guys, and hopefully, right? That's the whole hope out of this program, is so that people can talk about the things that are not talked about. The difficult conversations are had. Is there anyone else who'd like to answer this question? Go, Adi.
Yeah, I think that the pandemic definitely influenced motivated me to share my specific story. I think the pandemic also motivated me to have my story in the first place, because like Abhi mentioned, the global pandemic has created quite like an insular environment, both like physically but also emotionally. And it was definitely one of the like motivators for me to come out to my parents or my family, because I think it got to a point where the fear of, or like the pain of keeping that in was greater than the fear of what would happen if people found out. And I think that kind of piggybacked onto why I chose to share that story, or have that story in the first place. So it was definitely a motivator. And then, like Abhi mentioned again, because you feel so alone, you want to share that story in hopes that anyone else feeling alone can, even for just like the 1 hour that we all shared our stories, if even for that 1 hour someone can feel not alone, then that's a great like action that happens because of it.
Very well said. Very well said, Adi. And I truly hope that that happened for someone, to not feel that loneliness. Um, Mohima, do you want to answer?
Um, this is a very profound question, I feel, because my first thought was that the barriers created by the pandemic actually made it easier for me to join this event, because it was virtual and it catered to my introverted personality, that, oh, I don't have to actually put myself out there. So, but speaking to the collective physical distance and sense of loss during this time, I think while that has happened, the pandemic has also compelled people and put them in situations where they have to uncover anything that's bubbling on the surface. There has been a rise in domestic violence during this time, because people were shut in spaces, so you can't get out of avoiding situations anymore that you haven't addressed. So I know that I know that for people who might be feeling isolated while they're going through experiences like this while they're at home, it's beneficial to hear such stories and to know that they're not alone. Um, so I would like to think that that's a good impact. Um, but personally, I think it just gave me a lot of time to think. So I wouldn't say that it was difficult.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Mohima. Because we are short on time, I'm going to ask my last question to everybody. I also want to acknowledge to our viewers that Paroma has had some technical difficulties and she's lost her connection and she's trying to join back, but if she can't, she's apologetic for that. Our theme for this entire 3-month workshop was speaking the taboo. We all explored not just one in this process, so many taboos that are interconnected and interwoven. My question to you guys is, how do you view the word taboo and like the concept of taboo? Has that changed for you? Has any of that impacted you in certain way of like, this shouldn't be a taboo, but why is it a taboo, and the entire concept of taboo? Anyone wants to? Mohima.
I can go. I mean, it might have to, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm always drawn to whatever concept is considered taboo. Um, it's just something that I feel like I want to uncover, because it gives me a perspective. But the word taboo actually reminds me of a personal incident where I was like having this conversation with a friend where I told him that I'm not able to relate to other people. I feel like my life is not normal, and I think that plays into the theme of taboo. You feel like there's something that you cannot address and you don't fit in and you don't belong. So the answer that I had gotten was, who defines the terms of normal? Like, what is there an objective definition for normal? Like, there's no such thing. So like when I think of taboo, I think of that answer. It's like, have we just created this taboo for ourselves? I mean, or is this something that's normal and we're just not talking about it.
Very well said. Abhi?
Yeah, I think Mohima just spoke my mind there, because I was thinking the same, that, I mean, the dictionary might have a definition for the word taboo, but ultimately it's me making the choices, right? Internalizing what I think is something that I should be ashamed about. So I associate shame and taboo, the shame as one of the primary feelings caused by that. And so, yeah, for me, like the mental health, the battles that I've been having, I mean, yes, I understand that there is stigma in our society on the whole, but really, ultimately, it is me internalizing that message and then believing that message and wanting to hide, and furthering, or rather perpetuating that association that mental health is taboo. But what I've learned is, I mean, all you have to do is just speak your truth, and it no longer becomes taboo. It's still taboo for people out there, but it's not taboo for me, because I now have a different perspective on viewing this particular experience. So yeah, it's interesting. I have thought about this for quite a few years now, how society defines certain concepts or experiences as taboo, and then how we internalize them, being a product and part of this society. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that profound knowledge, right, guys? Like of taking that onus of self-work. Yes, the society perpetuates taboo, but it's up to us to dismiss that, or to imbibe it. So very well said, Avi and Mohima. Masood, we haven't heard from you in a while.
The taboo of being divorced, coming out of that. And yeah, it's to me, at one point, it was of something that that's not looked upon as a good thing. But writing it about it and seeing it through after a few years, what happened, and looking back through it, it's something that had to be done. And so at that point, when it was taboo, it was not anymore taboo for me. It showed me that it was more of a liberating. So yeah.
Very, very well said, Masood, to just challenge it, and then that's where liberation lies. Very, very well said. Turfa?
um, I was a kind of person who always was so confident in her life that I used to think taboos exist, but what is a taboo? They can't happen to me. Or ये सब मेरे साथ नहीं होगा, क्योंकि my life is in control, I'm in control of my life, and my decisions will not take me there. And then so many things happened, and I think only when the taboo is happening to you, I kind of understood the gravity of what it means, what a taboo has power on you. Before, I used to think, ये सब इन लोगों के साथ क्यों होता है, मेरे साथ नहीं होगा. So, from having a broken relationship with my mother-in-law, from going to almost getting a divorce, I married the man I loved. I mean, I did everything right. So why was all these things happening to me? And the shame that comes with the taboo, it's so strong. You don't know when it is controlling you. And then when I started this whole mental health journey, I was trying to raise awareness about mental health and mental illness. And I realized in order to understand mental health and mental illness, we need to deconstruct mental health. And when I started deconstructing, I realized everything I'm deconstructing, it comes to a taboo or something that's stigmatized. So it was like, oh my God, mental illness would not exist if all these taboos did not exist. So it was a huge shift for me from what I feel, like I always see the Turfa before her mental health breakdown and the Turfa after. It's so different, and my perspective was so different. And before I had an idea about what taboo was, and now it's the same word, but I have a different idea about what it is and how strong it is and how damaging it is to people and to society. But yeah, it's a remarkable one word, but has such strength and power over us.
Thank you, Tufa, for sharing that. That is so deep and so important for people to hear. Saleha, what about you?
To be honest, doing this workshop with the sphere is my beginning of my journey to start to not live within the bounds of these taboos that I have been, conditioned with since I was young. But I was just reflecting upon this while listening to everyone, how my mother, she really focused everything she did for others. Like for her, not doing the things that she needed to do to maintain that respect and that respectability was a taboo for her. So everything she did, had to be like, okay, it should look good for the eyes of other people so that they have a good impression of us, because we don't have anything else to put forward. And I talk about that in my story. And she really tried, and she still does, she really tries so hard to make that the forefront of everything, because it's hard, coming, especially as that first generation. Not some people get lucky, but some people don't, and they're still, I would say, stuck in that. But so I'm still on that journey. I'm not to go on, but I'm so grateful for that. And I know it's gonna be hard, but 1% will compound eventually, which is something that I'm learning from a book I'm reading.
Yes, it will. um, Before I go to Adi, Masoon, I have a comment for you from Chaz. Masoon, I want to thank you for expressing what you said about how being without a man brings a particular fear, but on the other hand, being with a man brings fear as well. That was very illuminating. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for sharing that, Chaz.
Thank you.
With that, Adi, do you want to talk about how you've used taboo after this entire process?
I think with I've always associated taboo with guilt and shame, and a level of judgment. And I think that, at least personally, there's a there's a notion of taboo when amongst other people that you kind of um, like you almost inflict, and then there's a level of taboo that you kind of hold yourself to. And I think that like Siddhi and like Rita and Farah and Natasha, like they've constantly reminded us that this is a space of no judgment. Um, so we're giving space to our taboos to live and to breathe and to have a life of their own, and then to kind of dissipate. And so that's kind of a reminder that I've taken forward, to have to be able to listen and to like have my ears open when people are speaking and when people are expressing, um, and again, to have no judgment. And like Saleh has said, like this isn't an easy thing, especially when you're working on removing the guilt and shame you hold yourself against. But of course, it's like a one day at a time process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like this for everybody, right? One day at a time, 1 minute at a time with the community that we have built. And just to add to what everybody has said, like the non-judgmental part is also so important, right? Like how Adi says, to let the taboos breathe and dissipate, and Turfa and everybody touched upon it. So thank you guys. Thank you for sharing not just your vulnerability with your courageous stories, but also your journey with our audiences through this Q&A. With that, we will have to bring this to a close. It's almost an hour. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Please follow Tasveer on all our social media channels. You can use the handle at Tasveer.org. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube and It is a fundraiser weekend, so please go to our website to show us some support. Every penny counts. So thank you for always being there. And we hope this helps someone in the audience to battle with their taboo and get over that. Thank you. Bye, guys.